Hey everyone, welcome to week 29. This is our final day, Friday. This is our ongoing Go Reds week. We are celebrating our Premier League victory. We are champions. By the way, this kit is so much nicer than the new one. This is so much better. So much better. Anyways, ongoing push week. So what we've been trying to do this week is kind of dissect a little aspect of our painting that moves us more than anything else in the painting, within the painting. And we're gonna try to really make up a hierarchy where that little bit that moves us occupies like the highest tier of things that are of importance in our painting. So we'll see how we do today. I thought it was an awesome week. We should be doing this all the time. We should be pushing things that makes us, in our painting every single day, every single time, not make just a special week about it. Remember, next week, new theme. Danny and I super grateful for your company. Next week, new thing, new theme. Bye. Okay, let's get started. This is our final day on our wonk week. Now, this is our push week. The thing is, yesterday's painting, I gave myself all the liberty in the world to do just about whatever I wanted. Maybe that's hyperbolic, but in essence, it was just about the joy of painting. It was just about trying things out, just putting things down, seeing how they look, trying to balance everything out, or maybe not. Maybe there's a total lack of balance in the painting, and that's completely fine. I think that one of the sentiments behind the project that we've done throughout this year is that we have to let ourselves try. We have to let ourselves see and explore all these aspects of painting that are unknown to us. And the only reason we're going to be able to learn from them is if we decide to travel through those roads. I know that sounds like an easy thing to do, but in reality, we get so used to doing what we do. We get so used to pleasing people that have built expectations around our painting. We are trying to satisfy a market that we've created for ourselves. It's very, very tough, and I completely understand it, to try and step to the unknown and say, I'm just going to see what happens. Because like anything in life, it's not like you're going to find a payoff in this, little adventure. Perhaps you just go off, into this tangent and you make 20 paintings, 30 paintings, and none of them work. And what you've learned is not something that you can apply to your painting, but it's something that you can apply to yourself. You're going to learn why a painting didn't work. And maybe after those 30 paintings, you return to your original way of thinking and you felt uncomfortable during all that time. That is totally plausible. Like, that can happen too. But I think that if we don't do it, we will never know. And there's this itch that I just can't resist when I ask myself, what if my painting changes completely and drastically? And what if I become a happier painter? And what if this broadens the way I understand painting? I can't live without knowing that. I can't know that these possibilities are at my fingertips and I decide to just clench my fist and say, no, I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to paint the way I've always painted and I'm fine here and I just don't want to explore further. Now, I may be a little bit hard on that stance, but the truth is there's people in this world, there's artists, there's painters that will reach, at a very young age, a type of painting that thoroughly satisfies them. And they are in this world that is complete bliss, and they just want to paint that way for the rest of their lives. And that is totally fine also. But I always want to make this clear, this is my path. Everything that I've narrated, there is a reason why I chose not to understand these exercises as being purely academic. Because I don't want to fall into dogmas of telling people these are the 10 things that you should do when you're painting with oils. These are the things to avoid when you're doing a gouache painting. I didn't want to do what I think a lot of people do well. Again, shout out to James Gurney. I think he's the one that does it best. But I didn't want to do that because I'd much rather just speak from my shore, from the road that I decided to travel, from the steps that I have taken that are taking me somewhere. I have no idea where this road is going to end. I don't know if there's a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow, and I don't care because I think just traveling through the rainbow is fantastic in and of itself. I think that that's where I'm going to find my life's enjoyment. So I always want to make that clear that this is about the decisions that have shaped my career, and I'm just trying to work out my thoughts. And yesterday, I had to remind myself that I love painting because it's fun. I love trying things out just because it feels cool and because it feels weird, and it just puts me in a spot where I have to say, wow, this kind of isn't working. And the way I define isn't working in my brain, it's just that I haven't painted like this before. This feels foreign. We human beings are always afraid of the things that we don't know. I love that moment where I have to encounter that ignorance, my own ignorance, and say, you're going to build things as you go. You're going to learn things as you go. You're going to encounter your biases as you go. And you're going to question yourself as you go. You have to build the painting in the meantime. And that's amazing to me. That's what I mean when I say that painting feels alive, like the painting process feels alive. It feels like every time you put something down, something magical is happening. It could be a catastrophe or it could be something that helps your painting grow, but it doesn't matter because either way, you're seeing this deep impact on the choices that you're making. Now, ideally, every single painting is built that way. Ideally, every single choice that you make comes from somewhere and is born from a reflection, from a deep conscious reflection. But the truth is, sometimes we kind of react through a painting, or we just become so accustomed to ourselves and our manner of seeing and our manner of painting that we forget. We forget that our choices do matter. We forget that the things that we believe in matter, and that it's our responsibility to just put those things to test. Yesterday's painting was very valuable to me in that sense. If I can paint with a smile on my face for 4 hours, that's amazing. What other feeling beats that? There's nothing in this world that is better than that. Feeling like there's complete joy in something that you're doing, in this work that you're doing. It's just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. Yesterday was about, yes, pushing in that sense. We took what we basically did on Monday, and we said, okay, let's put that on steroids and let's make it ridiculous and let's see what happens. Is there more room to make this painting more ridiculous? Oh my God, of course. Of course. I mean, I can only point to Ruprecht's painting, RVK. He is the master. He is incredible. My brain can only push so far, and I think I've gone far enough. And then I look at his paintings and I'm like, okay, I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. I feel so brave, and then I look at his work and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the most conservative person in this planet. There's obviously going to be room to grow, to push, to just push further and further and further and further. Like I said, there's probably going to be a point in your painting, because this is very, very subjective. This is particular to our own lives, where because we push so much, the painting actually breaks. But it doesn't matter, just the fact that we have pushed that far and we know how far we can extend ourselves is such an incredible feat that I think it is worth doing. I really do believe it. Does it always have to do with form, the qualities of form? No, of course not. You can push anything that's inherent to color or to value. It doesn't have to solely be about the way you represent something in terms of form. And like we did on my father's painting, it doesn't have to be entirely about the execution of it. It could be about the reason behind the painting. It could be about gathering the strength that we need in order to make a painting. So there are so many ways that we can push ourselves that it is just up to us. And the extent in which we push, like I said, and this is super, super important, and that's why I've tried to navigate this in a very multifaceted way. The extent in which we push does not equate to the amount of courage that we have. So the person that is able to do these insanely wonky paintings is not a better painter. There's not more courage there. There's not a more adventurous soul in that painter. No, maybe for us, it's just about saturating the color a little bit. Maybe it's dropping a color from our palette. Sometimes small choices can feel absolutely huge because we've gotten so used to working in a single manner that to betray that, to change that up a little bit, can seem almost overwhelming and insurmountable. For a lot of people, doing insanely crazy things does not require much courage. And for others, and I would put myself in that category, to take small steps requires all the strength in the world. Just to, step outside the door sometimes takes all the strength in the world. So we can't measure the ability someone has to push something. That is something that we have to define for ourselves and that we establish for ourselves. And I think today's painting is a kind of nice way to remember that it is subjective and it is relative. Now, what do I mean when I say that it is relative? The paintings that we've done where we've clearly pushed form, let's say Monday's painting and yesterday's painting, Thursday painting, in both Danny's painting and my mom's painting, it was about form, and it was about stretching and distorting and just changing the relative proportions of things. Those things are very, very clear to see, and it's almost like distorting by addition. You add, you push. But there's also another way to attack this problem, and it's far more subtle. What if the thing that we want to paint can remain the same, but everything else is just simpler? So instead of pushing one thing, we understand it as a constant, and what we do is that everything that's surrounding it is represented in a simpler manner. So this is another wonderful way to understand that everything in painting is about relationships. And the same way we think about color in terms of relationships, the elements, the aspects within our painting can be also relational. What we have to do is say, well, maybe I don't feel comfortable stretching this head or making this arm bigger, making this hand really big, or broadening this shape. Maybe I just want to keep the shapes as they are, but I do feel like there is a hierarchy to my painting. I do feel like there are areas of the painting that I want to exalt more than others. What do I do then there? I just don't feel like it is in me to go crazy. I think that this painting is a very nice example of that. I wanted to try and push composition. That's one of the aspects that I pushed. So we kind of pushed Danny's head towards the bottom, and there's a beautiful diagonal going upwards. There's a nice slope there that is symbolized by her hair, her ponytail. And that's about it. It's this painting that is bottom heavy and that has a very nice dark shape that helps the gesture become grounded. And the development of the painting is concentrated solely, specifically, it's almost like a bullseye in Danny's portrait. That's about it. But in a manner of speaking, this painting occurs in the bottom half of the painting and in the left side of the painting. So the bottom left of the painting is where almost 95% of the painting is happening. So if you think about it, 3/4 of the painting are kind of not active in this painting. So how do we do that? How do we balance that out? How do we say, okay, I'm going to push this tiny little moment of my painting that is occupying only a small percentage of the painting, and then I want everything else to, yes, be painted, but feel like it's balanced. So I'm pushing the idea of hierarchies. I'm saying this is going to be important, but I don't want to push it so much. So what can I do? I'm just going to make these other things less important. And what does that mean? What does it mean to paint something as less important? Because we have to paint it. That's the thing with painting. We have to solve it in some way. Even if we decide not to paint it, to leave just this dead space, that dead space has to be very, very active. That space that has nothing in there has to become active, has to behave as if it was alive. It just can't be dead. It just can't be nothingness. No, it has to have an energy and a gesture, and it has to be able to speak and relate to all the other areas of the painting. So how do we define less in order for the moment that we've developed to be understood as something that is pushed? But again, remember, this is all relative. I think the easiest way to understand less is in terms of resolution. So if we are going to paint something, if we're going to describe a specific form in nature, it means that we can just block it in. Instead of developing it, instead of seeing all the details, instead of seeing, information about texture and color and light, all these wonderful things that are inherent to nature, we just say, I'm just going to keep you in this very initial stage where I just propose the idea of you, where I'm just enunciating what you are, but I'm not going to further develop you. And that is a very, very basic, very direct, very efficient way of saying something in a less developed manner. Maybe you're painting something where the focus of your painting is somewhere where you're painting in a very full-bodied impasto way, while other areas of the painting can be thinner. The material quality of those paint layers can be one that does not compete with the sculptural quality of the areas that interest you most. And I think that kind of happens in this painting too. So I decided to block in all that space. And to me, it was a very, very abstract space. The cool thing about deciding to make a composition like this one, where I'm just pushing Danny to the left bottom corner of the painting, is that it will become very abstract in the way the shapes are read. And because it is abstract, you start kind of noticing that the remaining shapes, let's call them that, are just that. They are just these geometries that you can just understand as shapes, as very abstract shapes. And as soon as that clicks in your head, you realize, okay, this doesn't have to be a cushion, or this doesn't have to be a sofa, this doesn't have to be an armrest. They're just going to be shapes that are going to be painted, and that's about it. It's very cool when you kind of separate yourself a little bit, and this is like mentally taking a step back. This is saying, yes, this is a cushion, but if I step back, if my mind's eye just kind of takes a step back, 2 steps back, and just see things for what they are, then you can say, okay, I can actually solve this. Remember, the important thing is to solve it. I can actually solve this with very economical brushstrokes, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else. Easier said than done, though, because solving something in very economical ways with very little strokes is very hard. It's very, very hard. I always thought that a painting was complex when it was developed, when you had to model something, and just reaching that kind of end goal was just the hardest thing to do with painting. But nowadays I understand that when you say something and you try to say it in a very succinct manner, you try to say it in very simple terms, oh my God, that's something that's so, so tough, because there's no backtracking. When you want to say something in a very simple way, you either kind of hit it initially or you don't. And if you don't hit it, there's no way you can take that painting back to zero. You can't Command Z your way, Control Z your way back to zero, and then start again. No, your decision is there, and it's going to affect every single decision that you put on top. Sometimes you just don't want to keep adding and adding and adding decisions on top of a decision that was far from the intent that you had, because it ends up looking labored. And the thing is, if we were trying to communicate that this other area of the painting, in this case, Danny's portrait, is not going to be like super developed. It's not going to feel like it has 30 layers of paint as if it was a late Lucian Freud. But if we wanted to, relative to the other areas of the painting, to feel like it's far more developed than those areas, then those other areas can't compete with that area. They can't start feeling like that area. So we have to be super, super careful in saying, okay, every single choice that I'm going to make is important. Every single choice, every single brushstroke, every direction of my brushstroke, the size of the brush that I decide to use, all those things are going to matter. Because I'm never going to really know until I see it, until I see like, okay, if I put, these strokes down to try and synthesize, this couch, is it going to work? And I have to let myself do it to see if it works. And when it works, oh my God, it's so beautiful. That's when you realize, why do I labor over stuff? Why do I work so hard over stuff if I can say it with less? And that's an amazing thing. This painting today, I think it was a wonderful balance to yesterday's painting, because we are not trying to just push and push and push and add and add and add as if it was like an additive thing. What we can try to also imagine is a kind of circumstance where pushing can sometimes mean that everything around the area that we consider hierarchical in our painting can be treated in a little simpler manner. And perhaps that's all we needed to show the observer that we wanted to emphasize that particular moment of our painting. I think that's going to be it for this week. I'm super happy. These weeks are really fun to do. And I think that the most enjoyable part of it is trying to understand that there's no single way of approaching, the theme of the week. I always try to find exercises that don't necessarily push us in a single direction. And I always try to push myself to try and understand that perhaps the most important part is not seeing painting as this tool that can only do one thing. The exercises are not meant to be conditioning, and painting is not meant to be just a hammer. The only job that a hammer does is to hammer things. No, I think painting is so much more broader than that. I think it's very cool when we can have weeks where we think we can have a solution to a problem, and then we kind of wipe that slate clean and say, let me see if I search and if I can find another solution for this problem. And I think that when we do that, that is amazing. That is expanding our brain. That is opening ourselves up for possibilities. And that is just widening our perspective. And I think that those are the most healthy ways to understand and view painting. So that was it for this week. I think for next week, we're going to see if we can try to tie something I did on today's painting with a manner in which I approach painting that has to do with the elements of drawing and how they are balanced with the elements of painting. So I think next week we're going to tackle the role of drawing in a painting. And I think that's going to be super exciting. But that's going to be next week. So I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for hanging out during this week. As always, on Fridays, both Danny and I thank you for your patience. Thank you for lending us a little bit of your time during the day and letting us be your company. Thank you guys. Bye.